Hey cookmates, so today I'm going to be showing you how to make this fantastic, soft, yummy, fluffy bread called Agege bread. If you're wondering what Agege is a city in Lagos, Nigeria, and we eat this bread in Nigeria. So my best guess is that it was first made in the city of Agege, Lagos, Nigeria, and so that's probably where the name came from. Okay, thank you for coming to my history class, cookmates. Without further ado, let's jump into the recipe. To begin the process, I'm going to be adding warm water to a bowl, and it's very important that your water is warm and not hot, as hot water will kill your yeast, which means your bread will not rise. I've also added a teaspoon of sugar from the total sugar I'm going to be using for this recipe, as well as the yeast. Now I'm going to give that a good mix and let it sit for 5 to 10 minutes. This process is called proofing the yeast, and here the yeast feeds on the sugar and produces a foamy layer on the surface if it is indeed active. Every time I watch the yeast do its thing, I find it so creepy and I thought to show you guys a glimpse of it. If you're using active dry yeast, this step is very important as active dry yeast needs to be rehydrated for it to work efficiently. If you're using instant yeast, you can skip this proofing step and add all your dry ingredients at once to your water. I'm using instant yeast and I'm carrying out this process of proofing because I've had the yeast in the house for a while and I wanted to test its viability and see that it was still active. As you can see, the yeast has bloomed, and now I'm going to go ahead and add my sugar, flour, and some salt. I'm going to give that a good mix and make sure the ingredients are well combined. Once the mixture is well combined, I'm going to go ahead and transfer that to my work surface and add some butter. Now I'm going to go ahead and work my butter into my dough and make sure it's well incorporated. This step can be tricky as once you add your butter to the dough, it's going to make your dough quite sticky and you might be tempted to add more flour. But don't add more flour just yet. Keep on working the butter into the dough for 3 to 5 minutes, and at the end of 5 minutes you should have a pretty firm dough as the gluten forms. If you're still not satisfied with the texture of your dough after 5 minutes and you feel like it's still too sticky, you can go ahead and add up to 1 tablespoon of flour, but you shouldn't be adding any more than that. Now that my butter has been well incorporated into my dough, I'm going to go ahead and start kneading. I'm going to be kneading my dough for about 15 minutes and let me just tell you in advance that you should get ready to use your muscles because this process can be quite tiring. If you do have a stand mixer, please go ahead and use your stand mixer. I'm only doing this to show you how you can knead your dough if you do not have a stand mixer. And trust me guys, under normal circumstances, I will use a stand mixer because this kneading of a thing is not for the faint-hearted. Before I forget, if you've not subscribed to my channel, please go ahead and press the subscribe button right now. Come on now, it's free. I begged you in my last video and now I'm begging you again. Oh yeah, please press subscribe and also press the notification bell, and if you do like this video, please give it a thumbs up. At this point, I was about 10 minutes into kneading my dough and I just went ahead to test to see if my dough had been well kneaded. A well kneaded dough is supposed to spring back up once you push down on it, and as you just saw, my dough did not spring back up, so I continued kneading for another 5 minutes. At this point, I had kneaded the dough for the additional 5 minutes, so now I'm just going to see if it has been well kneaded. So I'm going to push back on it and see if it springs back up. Yes, I was so happy at this point. For your reference, you could go back to see how the dough just stared at me the last time I did the test. Chai. So now I'm just going to flatten out the dough and begin cutting. I'm going to be cutting my dough into 6 equal pieces. To make sure the pieces are equal so you can get an evenly shaped bread, you can go ahead and weigh the dough individually on the scale and make sure the weights are equal. But what I usually do is I just roll it in the palm of my hand to get a feel of it, and if one feels smaller than the other, I cut a little bit from it and add it to the other one. No time to waste time, but definitely feel free to use a scale. Now that I'm satisfied with the size of each dough, I'm going to go ahead and butter my pans. You want to make sure you get all the corners of your pan so that it's not difficult for your dough or for your baked bread to come out of the pan. So now I'm just going to take each piece of dough and shape them before I place them in the pan. In order to do this, I'm going to roll out the dough with a rolling pin first. So now that I've flattened out my dough with my rolling pin, I'm just going to go ahead and shape it into a small log by folding it and pinching it down and repeating the process until I've exhausted the dough. I'm going to do this process for all 6 pieces of the dough. Now I'm just going to be placing the dough in the buttered pans and I'm going to cover it and leave it to rise in a warm place for about an hour or until it has doubled in size. At this point, my dough had been rising for about an hour and some minutes, and as you can see, it has doubled in size and is ready for baking. So I'm just going to go ahead and preheat my oven to 350 degrees and bake those babies in it for 25 to 30 minutes. Our bread has baked beautifully, and now I'm just going to go ahead and take them out of the pans. You don't want to leave it in there for too long because the bread is going to start sweating. At this point, I'm just going to go ahead and brush the top of the bread with some melted butter. This step is completely optional, but it softens the crust of the bread as well as gives the bread a nice glossy and shiny look. Once you've brushed the surface with the melted butter, you should leave the butter to do its thing and work its way through the crust for about 5 minutes. But honestly, if you cannot wait, just go ahead and dig in. This was after about waiting for 5 minutes, and look at how beautiful and shiny and just delicious the bread looks. At this point, I was ready to drop the camera and just dig in. So now I'm just going to go ahead and grab myself a well-deserved piece. Look at how soft and delicious it looks. You know you've done a great job when you push down on the bread and it bounces back up just like that. And what is bread without butter? I'm just going to open up that bread and lay some butter in it, like the way Agege bread is typically eaten. At this point, the aroma of the bread would have filled your entire house and it will even be calling your neighbors. Look at how soft and succulent this bread is. When I tell you this bread was delicious, it was delicious. Thank you so much for watching, Cookmates. I really do hope you try out this recipe, and I'll see you in my other videos. Bye!
So yummy.